My mother-in-law took my son to the doctor without asking me, and then got offended when I called her out. I'm 34F and my husband, Mark, 36M, and I have been married for 7 years. We have a 4-year-old son, Eli, who's the center of our world. I work part-time as a graphic designer, which allows me to be with Eli most afternoons. My husband works in finance, long hours, often home late. My MIL, Linda, has always been what people might politely call involved. If you ask me, she has never quite accepted that Eli is my child too, that I'm his mother, not just some woman borrowing him for a few years until she takes over. From the moment I got pregnant, she's had opinions. How I should give birth, how I should feed Hai, how often he should sleep, how cold is too cold. You name it, she's had a battle plan. And because Mark grew up in a very close family, meaning his mother ruled the household, he's often struggled to set boundaries. I've learned to pick my battles. When she insists Eli needs a hat in 80 degrees Fahrenheit weather, I roll my eyes internally. When she criticizes my modern parenting, I ignore it. When she shows up unannounced with casseroles and just wants to help, I grit my teeth and smile. Because I love my husband. Because I don't want my child to grow up in a war zone. But what happened 2 weeks ago crossed a line I didn't even know existed. It was a Thursday morning. I had a client call and asked Linda if she could watch Eli for an hour or two. This isn't unusual, she often insists she wants more time with him, so I thought this was a win-win. I packed snacks, toys, and made sure to give her very clear instructions. No candy. No screen time. No going anywhere without letting me know. She nodded, said, "Of course, honey," in that sweet venom voice of hers. Around 10:30 a.m., I finished my call and texted her to check in. No reply. 10 minutes later, I called. No answer. Okay, maybe they were in the backyard. I waited. Another 20 minutes passed, and my stomach started to knot. I called again. This time she answered, cheerful as ever. "Oh. We're just at the doctor's office." I felt the blood drain from my face. The doctor's office? What do you mean? I asked. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart," she said, as if that made it better. Eli had a little cough yesterday, so I thought it'd be smart to get him checked out. Dr. Mason always says it's better to be safe than sorry. I could barely get the words out. "You took my son to the doctor, without asking me?" She sighed, that deep, theatrical sigh that only someone who thinks you're the problem can do so well. "I'm his grandmother. I'm not some stranger." "You were busy." "I'm helping." I don't even remember hanging up. I just grabbed my keys, practically flew down the driveway, and drove to the pediatrician's office. My heart was pounding. It wasn't even about the cough, Eli gets the occasional sniffle. It was the fact that she made a medical decision for my child without even informing me. When I arrived, they were already in the exam room. I walked in mid-appointment, and Eli looked up and said "Mommy," before jumping into my arms. The nurse glanced at me, clearly confused. Linda sat there like she owned the place, calmly holding Eli's little jacket on her lap. I asked the nurse what was going on. She explained Linda had signed the consent as his guardian. Guardian. I swear I almost blacked out. I interrupted the appointment. I told the nurse, probably a little too loudly, that I was Eli's mother, that no medical decisions were to be made without me present or my consent. Linda rolled her eyes in front of everyone. "You're overreacting," she said. He was coughing. A good mother wouldn't wait around to make sure her child's okay. That hit me like a slap. Not even subtle. The nurse awkwardly stepped out to give us a moment, and I turned to Linda. My hands were shaking. "Don't you ever do something like this again," I hissed. "You don't get to make medical decisions for my son." Her face hardened, no softness, no regret. Just pure indignation. I raised Mark. "I know how to take care of a child. You work. You're busy." I was being responsible. "Responsible?" I said, nearly laughing from disbelief. "You kidnapped my kid to the pediatrician. Mark came home late that night, exhausted as usual. I tried to explain what happened. I expected outrage, shock, at least a little righteous anger on my behalf. Instead, I got, "I'm sure she didn't mean any harm. She was worried about Eli. You know how she is." And there it was, the line that makes my skin crawl, "You know how she is." As if being controlling, undermining, and manipulative was just a quirky character trait I had to tolerate. As if motherhood meant sharing the role with a woman who's still stuck in the 80s where grandma knew best. I snapped. I told him this wasn't about being worried, this was about control. He accused me of escalating everything. I accused him of never backing me up. We fought until 1 a.m., whispered yelling because Eli was asleep upstairs. He eventually said, "I'll talk to her tomorrow," which usually means I'll say something vague and ineffective. Spoiler, that's exactly what happened. The next day, Linda came over unannounced. Again. She marched into my kitchen like she owned the place, clutching a Tupperware of her famous chicken soup, a peace offering or a power play. Honestly, at this point I can't tell. "I just want to say," she began, "I'm sorry if you felt like I crossed a line." Oh, that apology. The kind where they don't actually apologize for what they did, only for your reaction to it. I stood there with my coffee mug, watching her smile, that tight smile of someone who's never actually been told no in her life. "I'm his grandmother," she continued. "You should be grateful he has someone who loves him this much." And that was the moment I realized, she genuinely believes she has a right to override me. It's not a misunderstanding. It's entitlement. I calmly told her, "Linda, if you ever take Eli anywhere without my permission again, you will not be allowed unsupervised visits. Ever." She blinked at me like I'd slapped her. Then she laughed, that awful, sarcastic laugh. "You can't keep a grandmother from seeing her grandson." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just said, "Watch me." She stormed out. An hour later, my husband got a text from her accusing me of being cruel, ungrateful, and unstable. What I didn't expect was what came next. She started calling everyone, Mark's sister, his aunt, even his old family friends, to tell her version of the story. She went crazy because I took Eli to the doctor. What kind of mother gets angry when someone cares? I started getting cold, polite messages from his extended family. One of his cousins, who I barely speak to, actually texted me. "I don't understand why you're making a big deal out of this. My MIL takes my kids to appointments all the time." I wanted to scream. Because this wasn't about the damn cough. It was about boundaries. Even worse, Mark hated confrontation. He kept trying to mediate instead of picking a side. Which, in a situation like this, is basically picking hers. That was the week something inside me shifted. The weekend after the doctor incident felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. Linda stopped showing up to the house unannounced, but not out of respect. Out of strategy. I knew because she switched from being loud and intrusive to calm and passive-aggressive, which was always her most dangerous mode. She began sending texts. Not to me, of course. To Mark. "I miss Eli so much. I hope I can see him soon, but I don't want to upset her. I guess I'm just a bad grandma now. I've never felt so unwelcome in my own family." She's a master of martyrdom. And Mark, God bless his conflict-averse soul, crumbles under guilt like wet paper. I told him, "She's manipulating you." He said, "She's just hurt." I said, "I'm hurt too." He said, "It's not the same." That last line sat in my chest like a stone. It meant, her feelings matter more than yours. I realized I wasn't just in a conflict with my mother-in-law. I was in a power struggle, one I hadn't even agreed to play. About a week later, Mark convinced me to go to a family dinner. His words. "Maybe if we just talk face to face, it'll smooth things over." I wanted to say no. I should have said no. But part of me was tired of feeling like the villain in a story where I was the only one protecting my own child. We arrived at Linda's house at 6 p.m. sharp. She greeted Eli with exaggerated affection, arms wide open, cooing loudly, telling him how much Grandma missed her baby. She didn't hug me. Didn't even say hello. Her sister, Mark's aunt, was already there. So were two cousins. That was my first warning sign. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a performance. Throughout the meal, everything she said was laced with subtext. Some people just don't understand what it means to put family first. Back in my day, you didn't have to ask permission to care for your own grandchild. I guess things are different now. Mothers are so sensitive. Everyone laughed lightly. Mark stared at his plate. Eli played with his peas. I sat there, fork frozen in my hand, wondering how I became the villain in a story I didn't write. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Linda," I said, calm and clear. "What you did was wrong. You took my child to the doctor without my knowledge or consent. That's not care. That's overstepping. And if you ever do it again, there will be consequences." The table went quiet. She looked at me, not like someone being confronted, but like someone who had expected this moment and was ready to play it. She put down her fork gently. "I don't need to ask permission to protect my grandson." "Yes," I said, voice firm. "You do." Her lip curled in that subtle, pitying way. "You're a good mother in your own way. But you're young. You work. You're tired. Sometimes you don't see what's best for him." "I do." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. She was saying it out loud. She genuinely thought she knew better than I did how to parent my son. Mark whispered, "Let's not do this here." I turned to him. "This is exactly where it needs to be done." She put a hand to her chest like some tragic heroine. "I've never been treated like this in my life. Not after everything I've done for this family." And then the coup de grace. Maybe Eli is better off spending more time with people who actually care about him. That was it. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the tile floor. I picked Eli up, calmly, firmly, and said, "We're leaving." Linda gasped, "You can't just walk away." I looked at her. "Watch me." That night, Mark and I had the worst fight of our marriage. He accused me of humiliating his mother. I accused him of never defending me. He said I was tearing the family apart. I said his mother already had. I think we both said things we couldn't take back. But the thing that cut the deepest wasn't shouted. It was whispered. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I realized, for him, peace mattered more than principles. I married a good man. But not a brave one. I told him, "If you can't stand next to me on this, then you're standing against me." He didn't answer. The next morning, Linda tried to call me. I didn't pick up. She called again. And again. When I didn't answer, she called my mother, who she barely speaks to complain about me. She actually said I was keeping Eli away out of spite. She even called Eli's pediatrician's office and left a message asking if she could have access to his medical information as a caregiver. Thankfully, the nurse called me immediately. My hands were shaking as I told them. "She is not authorized. If anyone but me or my husband calls, do not share a single word." It was no longer about emotions. It was about legal boundaries. So I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted to escalate, but because I finally understood that people like Linda only respect walls they can't climb. The lawyer explained something I hadn't fully grasped. As a parent, I can legally restrict her from making any medical or educational decisions for Eli, and I can also limit her visitation if she continues to undermine parental authority. That call was the first time in weeks I felt my breathing steady. Of course, Linda didn't back down. She doubled down. She started what I call the victim campaign, calling every relative, every family friend, crying about how she was cut off from her grandson. She hates me. I don't even know what I did wrong. All I ever did was care for Eli. I'm being punished for being a good grandmother. And the worst part? Some people bought it. I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I'm sure you can work it out. She loves Eli so much. She's just old-fashioned. No one wanted to talk about my rights as a mother. Only about her feelings as a grandmother. But something in me had changed since that dinner. I didn't flinch anymore. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. When they said, she loves him, I said, so do I. But I'm his mother. A week later, Linda showed up at my doorstep. No call. No text. Just that soft knock she always uses, like she expects to be let in. I opened the door just enough to look at her. She had a soft expression, a practiced one. I just want to talk, she said. Please. Let me see Eli. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She blinked, not expecting that. Linda, I said quietly, you crossed a line you can't uncross. You undermined me as a mother, then tried to turn the entire family against me. I will not pretend this didn't happen. She started crying. Real or not, I didn't care anymore. I just love him so much, she whispered. I know, I said. But love doesn't give you power. It doesn't give you the right to make decisions that aren't yours to make. Her voice sharpened. You can't keep me away from him forever. I met her eyes. Calm. Steady. Then earn your place in his life by respecting mine. And for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Just silence. Heavy, raw silence. Things didn't magically fix themselves after that day. But they changed. Linda stopped showing up unannounced. She still calls, mostly through Mark, but she's careful now. Measured. She knows I'm not bluffing. Mark and I went to counseling. I told him I needed a partner, not a referee. He listened. It wasn't easy, but he started standing up to her, slowly, awkwardly, but genuinely. And I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. A few nights ago, Eli was coughing again. I sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair. For a moment, I remembered that awful day at the pediatrician's office, the way I felt powerless, overridden, erased. But that's not who I am anymore. I'm not the woman who flinches when someone calls me too sensitive. I'm the woman who protects her child. Even if it makes people uncomfortable. Even if it makes me the villain in someone else's story. Love doesn't give you the right to take over someone else's child. It just gives you the choice to respect the mother who already does. Thank you for listening me.